So for this particular session, we are going to discuss IAS 38, okay, which will cover intangible assets. So basically, IAS 38, ang counterpart niyan in the Philippines is IAS 28, so alam na natin yon. And practically, if you're going to read the international version, that's basically the same as the Philippine version because practically, it was adapted in 100%. Pinalitan lang yung international ng Philippines. So, wala tayong kailangang maging problema if you will encounter international version questions or Philippine version questions. So, that's basically the same. So, let's start with the objectives of the standard. So, the objectives of IAS 38 intangible assets is to prescribe the accounting treatment for intangible assets that are not dealt with specifically in another IFRS. So basically, if later on you will encounter some items of intangible assets that are covered by a specific standard, okay, then yun ang susundan nating standard. Pero kapag wala, then general treatment will be yung prescribed ng ating IAS 38. So the standard requires an entity to recognize an intangible asset if and only if certain criteria are met. So bibigay natin yung mga criteria later on. The standard also specifies how to measure the carrying amount of an intangible asset and requires certain disclosures. So yun ulit yung mga babalikan natin. So practically in all standards, there will be objectives, scope, key definitions. We also have the initial and subsequent measurement, recognition criteria, disclosures. Okay, so yun yung mga items natin. So let's go immediately to our scope. Okay, so the scope of our standard, okay, so IAS 38 will apply to all other intangible assets other than, okay, so meaning this, yung items na nandito sa baba, these are the exceptions to intangible assets that are covered by the standard. So first, we have financial assets. Okay? Because basically financial assets are also considered as intangibles kasi wala naman talaga silang physical substance. Okay? They are simply represented by paper or a particular substitute pero wala talaga siyang physical substance. Okay? So yun yung concept niya. Pero hindi siya considered as intangible asset under IAS 38 kasi may specific standard tayo dyan, which will be formerly IAS 30 to IAS 39 and now IFRS 7 and IFRS 9. So basically yun yun. Next, exploration and evaluation assets, okay, because it is covered by IFRS 6. So this is pertaining to the evaluation and exploration rights. Okay, not particularly the wasting asset, di ba? So, ang concept kasi nun, it is possible na ang natanggap ng isang entity is yung exploration ng wasting asset, rights to the particular asset, and not necessarily the asset itself. Kumbaga, hindi, kunyari, binigyan ka ng government ng right to explore that area, but not necessarily that na ikaw yung may-ari ng area na yun. So, ganun lang naman yung ibig sabihin natin doon. So that is why for this particular item, sa second item natin, kapag meron kang rights that are relating to exploration and evaluation assets, then it is going to be covered by IFRS 6. Okay? Next, expenditure on the development and extraction of mineral oil, natural gas, and similar resources. Okay? So kasi related din siya doon sa dito, sa IFRS 6. Next, intangible assets arising from insurance contracts issued by insurance companies. Okay, kasi ito ay covered ng IFRS 4. Okay, yung insurance contracts natin. Intangible assets covered by another IFRS such as intangible assets held for sale. Kasi magiging covered na siya ng IFRS 5. Yung deferred tax assets, kasi di ba intangibles din yung mga yan eh. Kasi wala naman talagang physical substance pero it is covered by IAS 12 income taxes. Lease assets, okay, or yung lease rights pa nga ganyan kasi covered siya ng IAS 17, ngayon IFRS 12 na. Okay, assets arising from employee benefits, okay, which is covered by IAS 19, and goodwill covered by IFRS 3 business combination. Although we are still going to discuss or we'll still have items pertaining to goodwill computation kasi it is possible na maka-encounter tayo ng ganyang questions later on. Okay, so i-discuss lang natin. Okay, so we now go to our key definitions. So, key definitions tayo. First will be yung concept ng intangible assets. Okay? So, ang definition ng intangible asset, it is an identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance. So, yun yung pinaka-first muna. Identifiable siya. Ibig sabihin, meron siyang characteristic na pwede natin siyang ma-recognize separately or ma-acknowledge separately. Okay? Pero wala siyang physical substance. Okay? It is an asset, okay, that is controlled by an entity as a result of past events, okay, and from which future economic benefits are expected. Okay, so to sum it up, ano yung characteristic ng ating intangible asset? So ito yun. First will be identifiability. Explain natin sa baba kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng identifiability. Second, kailangan may control. Tapos second, may future economic benefits. Okay? So, yun yung characteristic ng ating intangible asset. So, pag may nawala dyan, kahit isa dyan sa items na yan, sa tatlo, hindi na natin pwedeng i-recognize as intangible asset kasi may nawawala ng item. So, what do we mean by identifiability? So, we can consider an intangible asset to be identifiable if it satisfies either the first bullet point or the second bullet point. So either kasi or yung nakalagay, hindi kailangan meron yung both. So first requirement or first determinant of identifiability is it is separable. Meaning it can be separated, sold, transferred, licensed, rented, exchanged, okay, either individually or together with a related contract. So ibig sabihin, pwede mong masabi or pwede siyang maging subject ng isang business transaction. Okay? Na hindi nangangailangan ng other items na naka-attach sa kanya before siya mabenta. So separable, ganun lang naman yung concept niya. Or it arises from a contractual or legal right regardless of whether those rights are transferable or separable from the entity or from other rights and obligations. So, ibig sabihin ng second bullet point, ang isang intangible asset ay pwedeng maging identifiable kapag nanggaling sa isang contract. Okay? Kasi basically, kapag yan ay contractual right or legal right, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, meron kang hawak na papeles or meron kang hawak na document that proves, okay, of the existence of that particular intangible asset. So, ibig sabihin, kung meron kang document or proof, okay, na meron kang nito, edi identifiable siya. Diba? So, ibig sabihin, pwede mong masabi na itong intangible asset na to ay different from the other or it is separately recognizable from the other or it is distinct from the other. Parang ganun siya. So, basically, yun yung concept ng identifiability. Okay, so what are some examples of intangible assets? Okay, so ito yung mga examples ng intangible assets natin. So first, patented technology, so or basically patents, computer software, databases, and trade secrets. Okay? So, pansin mo pati trade secrets, considered siya as intangible asset. Okay? However, the problem there is, di ba, the concept of trade secret kasi, since it is a trade secret, hindi talaga natin alam yung details ng particular na intangible asset na yan. So, hindi mo necessarily ma-recognize kung magkano yung value niya. Okay? Unless meron sigurong actuary or merong certain entity na may idea kung paano i-value ang trade secret. Like example, yung formula ng, ito naman yung usual na ginagamit na example, yung formula ng Coca-Cola, that's actually a trade secret. But the problem there is, how do you value a trade secret? Okay? So with that, if you are curious with the valuation, you can actually try to look, kasi di ko pa nasubukang tignan, pero you may look at the financial statements of Coca-Cola, yung mismong parent company Okay, tapos i-check mo kung meron ba siyang line item for the trade secret or meron siyang details ng trade secret kung sakali man. Okay? So yun yung pwede mong i-consider. Tapos tignan mo kung paano vina-value. Kasi ang pagkakaalam ko, the valuation of a trade secret is very highly technical and it depends on the potential value na po-project. Okay? Tapos usually ang trade secret, hindi yan amortized. Okay? Kasi yan ay indefinite ang life. Anyway, next tayo, we have trademarks, trade dress. Okay? Hindi ko alam ano ang trade dress. Okay. Trademarks, trade dress, newspaper, mastheads, internet domains. Okay? So, pwede yan makonsider as intangible assets. Okay? So, of course, again, valuation nito usually at cost lang siya. Okay? Depende. Okay. Pero take note kasi meron yung mga pag internally generated, meron siyang hindi pwedeng ma-consider. So generally, itong mga to, trademark, trade dress, newspaper, mastheads, internet domain, ito yung mga acquired from another entity. Okay? Kasi kapag internally generated, usually wala siyang, or general rule, wala talaga siyang recognition as intangible asset. Okay? Next, video and audiovisual material such as motion pictures, television programs. So meron kang right over that. Kaya nga parang ngayon in the current situation, usually all of the programs that are being shown in Netflix, okay, aside from the Netflix originals, kasi pag Netflix originals usually yan, ang may-ari na niyan mismo is si Netflix na. So a-applyan din na yan ng sariling intangible asset. Pero generally, yung mga audiovisual or yung mga videos na pinapalabas sa Netflix, usually kailangan magbayad ng royalties ng Netflix dyan. Kasi merong sariling or merong separate na company or entity na may-ari ng mga yon. Okay? Pero yung mga Netflix originals, yun ay pagmamay-ari ni Netflix mismo. So, i-consider niya as intangible assets na yun. Okay? Pero yung mga hindi niya pagmamay-ari, that is basically parang royalties ang babayaran niya doon sa may-ari. Okay? So, ganun yun. Customer list, okay? This is only considered as an intangible asset kapag in-acquire mo from an outside party. Kapag internally generated yan, hindi yan pwedeng maging intangible asset. Mortgage servicing rights. Okay, so ito yung basically mortgage transaction, di ba? So yung binigyan ka ng right to process this particular mortgage transactions. Okay? Licensing, royalty, and standstill agreements. Okay, so kumbaga meron kang right to receive this particular or the particular benefits arising from licensing, royalties, and standstill agreements. Okay, import quotas. Yan. This is also an intangible asset kasi parang ganito yan. Ang concept ng import quotas, bibigyan ka ng, usually manggagaling to sa government. Okay, bibigyan ka ng right ng government to import a specific number or a specific quantity of a particular commodity. So kapag lumampas ka na dun sa quota, hindi ka na pwedeng mag-acquire. So generally, intangible asset siya kasi may benefit kang madederive. So kapag wala kang na-acquire na import quotas, then hindi ka pwedeng mag-import ng particular commodity. So ganun yan. Okay? Kaya ka di ba may tinatawag na smuggled, ganun. Kasi yung mga smuggled, yan yung mga wala naman talagang right to be imported or wala talaga silang hindi talaga sila dapat pwedeng ma-import kasi walang proper paper. Pero kumbaga pinuslit sa inside ng country ganun. So, 'yun yung mga illegal. Next, franchise agreements kapag ikaw ay franchisee. Kasi pag ikaw yung franchisor, hindi naman intangible asset ang consideration mo sa mga royalty ay sa mga franchises. Ang consideration mo kung ikaw yung may-ari ikaw yung nagbibigay ng right doon sa mga franchisees, parang revenue mo yun. Okay? Hindi mo siya intangible asset. Okay? Customer and supplier relationships, including customer list. So ito, medyo mahirap siyang ma-value kasi hindi mo alam kung paano mo yan i-value. Depende siguro doon sa potential contract na ma-arrive mo dyan. Tapos marketing rights. Okay? So technically, halos lahat naman ng rights, lahat ng licenses, lahat ng agreements na wala talagang physical substance pero pwede mong panghawakan at may madederive kang value, okay, pwede mo siyang consider as intangible assets provided you are able to get or you are able to identify it. So identifiable siya, mayroon siyang future economic benefits, tapos may control ka over that particular item. Okay? So ganun lang na. So moving on, what are the usual process of acquiring a particular intangible asset? So kung titignan mo, actually halos parehas siya sa property, plant, and equipment. Okay? Pwedeng separate purchase, bibilhin mo. Parang PPE din. As part of business combination, ito lang yung medyo kakaiba kasi wala namang business combination usually na dinidiscuss sa PPE. Government grant, pwede ring donation, pwedeng ganon. Exchange of assets, so yan na yung pwedeng other asset or other pwedeng cash, pwedeng other assets, pwedeng liability, pwedeng equity. So iba-iba yan. Tapos self-creation, ito yung tinatawag nating construction sa PPE, pero sa atin pag intangible assets, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin construction. Siyempre yan yung tinatawag na self-creation or internal generation. Okay, so usual, same lang yung process. So pwede mong i-refer doon sa recognition and measurement ng initial measurement ng PPE, pwede mo siyang i-apply sa intangible asset. Kasi basically, parehas lang naman sila. Ang pinagkaiba lang is yung physical substance. Next, we go to the recognition. Okay? So, similar to other assets, okay, the general recognition criteria for an intangible asset to be recognized in our books is yung general na recognition criteria for all assets. Dapat may probable future economic benefits that wherein the cost can be measured reliably. So, yun lang yung consideration natin dyan. Okay. So, to move on, yung requirement na to, ito, okay, applies whether an intangible asset is acquired externally or generated internally. Okay, so kailangan mo pa rin i-consider ito. Okay, whether binili mo sa labas or internally generated siya, and it qualifies to be recognized as an intangible asset. Okay, also there are additional requirements for the recognition of the cost of an intangible asset kapag internally generated. Diba ito na yung di-discuss natin before na may mga research and development cost. So ano yung mga rules natin for the treatment of or the recognition of your research cost and your development cost. So mamaya di-discuss natin in detail. Okay? The probability of future economic benefits must be based on reasonable and supportable assumptions about conditions that will exist over the life of the asset. Okay? The probability recognition criterion is always considered to be satisfied for intangible assets that are acquired separately or in a business combination. Okay? So pansin mo, yung probability, okay, of yung probability na meron nga siyang economic benefit, sure yan kapag in-acquire mo separately or sa business combination. Pero hindi siya laging achievable kapag internally generated. Kasi kailangan mo pang sundan yung mga other requirements. Okay? So, yun siya. So, ngayon, please remember, okay, na yung tinatawag na future economic benefits at saka kung gaano katagal yung benefit niya, it will be determined later on as either ang tawag dito, fixed or determinable fixed or determinable useful life or indefinite useful life. Kasi hindi pa natin sure yan later on. Kaya, ang ginagawa ng government is either treat that as an asset with amortization kasi bibigyan lang ng kung hanggang kailan ang legal life, or an asset that will be with indefinite life. Okay, so yun yan. So next tayo, if the recognition criteria is not met, so ito yun. So para daw pag hindi na-meet yung recognition criteria, okay, so meaning walang probable future economic benefit, it cannot be measured reliably, ano gagawin? IAS 38 requires the expenditure on this item to be recognized as an expense when it is incurred. So simple lang. Siyempre, hindi mo nga pwedeng i-capitalize, edi expense mo siya outright. Okay? Business combination tayo. Although this is going to be discussed in detail sa AFAR or sa Advanced Financial Accounting and Reporting. Pero generally, in business combinations kasi, di ba, all of the items will be measured in terms of fair value. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, that will also be your general basis in measuring your intangible assets na in-acquire mo sa business combination. So, as provided in the text, okay, there is a presumption that the fair value of an intangible asset acquired in a business combination can be measured reliably. Kasi of course, dadaan yan sa mga iba't ibang valuation. Particularly, bago naman magkaroon ng business combination, syempre magkakaroon ng mga independent appraisals, etc. An expenditure included in the cost of the acquisition on an intangible item that does not meet both the definition of and the recognition criteria of an intangible asset should form part of the amount attributed to the goodwill recognized at the acquisition date. Okay? So may nasabi lang dito yung regarding sa goodwill kasi parang ang labas dyan, di ba? After you measure all items including intangible assets in a business combination, tapos may sobra talaga. Yan yung tinatawag din nating excess, di ba? Parang kaparehas din lang siya sa investment in associate. Pag may excess that cannot be attributable to any specific asset or any specific intangible asset, then it will now form part of the unidentifiable intangible asset, which is yung goodwill. Okay? Kaya nga sinabi, there is a rule even in basic accounting na hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng goodwill sa partnership formation kasi yung partnership formation is not considered as a business combination. Okay? Now, next tayo, moving on. Reinstatement tayo. Okay? The standard also prohibits an entity from subsequently reinstating as an intangible asset at a later date an expenditure that was originally charged to expense. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kung expense na talaga siya, expense na siya. Huwag mo na siyang, kumbaga, walang bawian. Okay? Hindi mo na pwedeng sabihin na, ay, expense siya dati, dapat ngayon, intangible asset siya. Hindi ganun. Okay? So, bawal yun. So, ibig sabihin lang ng concept ng reinstatement sa intangible asset, bawal ang reinstatement or bawal ang pag-reclassify ng isang expense papalig papuntang intangible asset. Okay. So, ito na yung sinasabi natin. Initial recognition tayo ng research and development cost. So, what is the basic rule? Or what are the basic concepts relating to research and development? Okay, bago natin i-discuss, syempre, balikan lang muna natin yung basics niyan, no? So, pag sinabi kasi nating research cost, yan yung ang key term natin dyan is finding knowledge, di ba? Or discovering new knowledge. Okay, so yun yung key term natin sa research natin. Kapag development cost naman, application of knowledge, di ba? So yun siya. So ngayon, as a general provision of the standard, lahat ng research cost ay expense. Okay, lahat ng research cost ay expense. Tapos, ang development cost ay expense pa rin until you are able to reach technical or commercial feasibility. Ayan, no? Development costs are capitalized only after technical and commercial feasibility of the asset for sale or use have been established. Okay, so ibig sabihin, lahat ng development cost mo muna ay expense pa rin until you are able to satisfy this requirement. Okay? So yun lang yung mga considerations natin dyan. Okay? Next, if an entity cannot distinguish the research phase of an internal project to create an intangible asset from the development phase, the entity treats the expenditure for that project as if it were incurred in the research phase only. Okay? So, in other words, kung hindi mo sure kung anong stage mo na ba talaga nagastos yan, kung research phase ba or development phase, edi yung mas madaling treatment, expense mo na lang. Kasi hindi mo pa nga sure kung nagde-develop ka na, di ba? Yan. So, ganun lang yun, di ba? So, kumbaga, kung wala pang label, kung hindi mo pa alam kung ano ba talaga yung ginagawa mo, okay, ano yung pinaggagawa mo dyan, kumbaga, parang relationship lang na kung wala kayong label, expense mo, okay, huwag mo i-capitalize. Okay, baka umasa ka lang dyan, okay? So, yan yung consideration natin. Okay, so punta na tayo ulit. Next step tayo, Yung initial recognition doon sa in-process research and development acquired in a business combination. O, di ba kasi ang general rule natin, kapag research and development costs that did not yet reach the stage of technical or technological feasibility, expense muna siya. Pero it is a different case kapag nanggaling sa business combination. Kasi, kapag ang research and development project ay na-acquire in a business combination, it is recognized as an asset at cost even if a component is research. Okay? Subsequent expenditure to that project is accounted for as any other research and development cost. Okay? Yung normal pa rin niya. So, ibig sabihin, parang ganito siya. Yung existing na research and development project na in-acquire mo in a business combination, iti-treat mo siya as, an asset. So, ibig sabihin, iti-treat mo siya as an intangible asset. Pero, yung mga subsequent na mga gastos mo, kapag itutuloy mo na yung project, syempre, at least malalaman mo na kung research phase pa rin ba siya or development phase ba siya. Yun na yung gagamitan mo ng usual na requirement as provided dito sa taas. Kuha natin yun, ha? So, yung existing lang na laman nung in-acquire mo, yun ang magiging asset or yun yung magiging intangible asset. Pero yung mga subsequent expenditures mo relating to that, okay, i-treat mo siya normally based on the requirement dito sa taas. Okay. Next, initial recognition of internally generated brand, masthead, titles, list, etc. Ito yung sinabi natin kanina. Brands, masthead, publishing titles, customer list, and items similar in substance that are internally generated should not be recognized as assets. Kasi internally generated. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo mapoproject naman talaga yung benefit niyan kasi nanggaling sa'yo, ikaw din lang ang gagamit. Okay? However, if your brands, mastheads, publishing titles, customer list, and items na kinreate mo, ay ibebenta mo or bibigyan mo yung ibang entities ng right to use these internally generated items, it will become intangible assets of the licensee, acquiree, or franchisee. Okay? Pero sa'yo, sa point of view mo, hindi mo talaga intangible asset yan. Kasi nga, internally generated, ikaw yung gumawa niyan, okay? And specifically provided ng standard, hindi mo intangible asset yan. Pero, kapag ikaw na gumawa ng mga yan, internally generated mo, pagkatapos, ibibenta mo, bibigyan mo ng license, ipa-franchise mo, or i-transfer mo yan sa another entity. Okay? Then, it will become an intangible asset of that transferee. Okay? Kung sino yung tatanggap ng mga items na ito. Okay? So, itandaan mo ha. So, ikaw, sa point of view mo, parang tatanggap ka lang ng revenues. Ganon. So, in other words, ganon din. Di ba? Parang kunyari, si Potato Corner, di ba? Si Potato Corner kasi, ginawa yan ng isang company. Okay? So, sa point of view, nung gumawa ng Potato Corner, hindi niya talaga intangible asset ang pangalang Potato Corner. Okay? It will now become an intangible asset kapag si Potato Corner ay nag-franchise, nagpagamit, nagpa-license, okay, nung pangalan na yon or nung brand na yon para pwedeng magamit ng ibang business, kumbaga, i-carry nung other business yung pangalan na Potato Corner. Parang ganun yan. Okay, so that's basically how it works, okay? So kung ikaw later on medyo creative ka, pwede ka namang mag-create ng kung ano-anong mga brands, mastheads, publishing titles, ganyan. Tapos pag sikat or kapag sumikat ganyan, edi pwede mong ibenta, pwede mong i-license, ganyan. So at least kikita ka pa. Pero hindi mo intangible asset 'yon. Ang may intangible asset yung mag-acquire. Okay? Yan. Sige, so punta na tayo sa iba't ibang initial recognition item. Start tayo kay computer software. Okay? Kasi yung iba medyo madali lang naman eh. Okay? General, basta kung ano yung mga cost lang talaga. Pero may mga specific items kasi tayo na kailangan nating specify for specialized intangible assets at ang isa dyan is si computer software. Okay. So, for your computer software, kapag binili mo yan, syempre, capitalize mo kung magkano mo siya binili. Okay? for operating systems ng hardwares, okay, include in hardware cost. Okay? So parang ang labas ngayon ganito. Kapag may computer software ka, okay, or operating system ka na para sa isang hardware, ang mangyayari ngayon dyan, hindi mo i-recognize separately yung intangible asset. Okay? It will be included in the hardware cost. So, ibig sabihin parang ganito. Kapag bumili ako ng computer, bumili ako ng laptop, bumili ako ng desktop computer na may mga built-in or may mga pre-installed na mga softwares, pre-installed na operating system, hindi ko i-recognize separately yung Windows or yung Mac, okay, yung operating system as an intangible asset. I will simply recognize the entire cost ng desktop as PPE. Yun lang siya. So hindi mo siya pwedeng i-separate yung operating system. Okay, so ganun yun. So therefore, hindi siya pwedeng maging intangible asset. However, kapag ikaw ay bumili ng separate license, okay, so parang kunyari, di ba pag kunyari, nagbi-build ka ng sarili mong system, nagbi-build ka ng sarili mong PC, kunyari, ganyan. So, hindi ka bumibili ng mga pre-assembled. So, bibili ka lahat ng mga items, kumbaga parang, kunyari, balak mong gumawa ng computer shop, ganyan. So, ang ginawa mo, pumili ka lahat ng mga materials, lahat ng mga parts, lahat ng mga kailangan mo to build a setup ng PC para sa computer shop mo. Tapos, wala pa yung operating system. Siyempre, kasi, kumbaga, parang fresh na setup siya. Wala pang naka-install na kahit ano. Tapos, bibili ka ngayon ng operating system. Okay? So, meron namang free version, di ba, ang Windows, pero meron din yung paid version. So, pag bibili ka ngayon ng paid version ng Windows, okay, yun, pwede mong i-consider as intangible asset mo kasi may right ka over that particular software, di ba? So, pwede mo i-capitalize as a separate intangible asset. Okay? So, yun. Next tayo, internally developed. Okay? Pag internally developed yung computer software, whether for use or for sale, charged to expense until technological feasibility, probable future benefits, intent, and ability to use or sell the software, okay, resources to complete the software, and ability to measure cost is established. So parang, actually kung mapapansin mo, yung mga nakalagay dito, wait lang, ito, technological feasibility, probable future benefit, intent and ability to use, resource to complete, and ability to measure. Ito rin yung mga usual na kailangan mong i-check for the capitalization of internally generated intangible assets. So para mas maintindihan lang natin, ganito yung concept niyan. Kapag meron kang internally dine-develop na computer software, parang yan din yung usual na dumadaan sa research and development phase. So, ganun din, charge to expense all research and development items ng ating software development until ma-meet mo yung technological feasibility and all other requirements for itong naka-highlight, all other requirements for the capitalization of a particular cost in the development. Okay? Tapos, ano ang amortization natin ng computer software? So, over the useful life based on the pattern of benefit. Kapag wala kang makuhang pattern, basically, ang pinakamadali, straight line. Okay, so ganun lang. Ang medyo mahirap lang dyan, paano mo i-determine ang useful life. So, kasi minsan mahirap mo namang sabihin na itong software na dine-develop ko, magagamit mo yan ng buong 10 years. Okay? So, syempre, hindi mo malalaman kung yan ba ay subject to obsolescence, subject to competition, di ba? So parang hindi ko alam ano kasi naabutan yung games pero sabihin natin, kunyari, yung Dota na nanggaling sa Warcraft, ganyan. So that is a computer software. So how did that company determine kung magkano ang useful life? Okay? Pero basically, wala naman tayong problema dyan kasi eventually, change in accounting estimate lang naman ng useful life. So kapag nagkaroon ng change in useful life, edi adjust lang natin yung ating amortization or impairment. Okay, so ganun lang naman. Sige, moving on. Initial recognition. for certain other defined types of cost naman natin ng ibang items, okay? So, the following items must be charged to expense when incurred, okay? So, internally generated goodwill, obviously, kasi hindi nga pwedeng ma-recognize na goodwill kung hindi nanggaling sa business combination. So, internally generated goodwill will always be expense. Kunyari, kumbaga, parang gumawa ka ng project para magkaroon ng magandang reputation yung company mo, ganyan-ganyan. Since hindi yan nanggaling sa business combination, all of those will be expensed. Startup, pre-opening, and pre-operating cost, expense din lang yan. Training cost will still be expense. Advertising and promotional cost, including mail order catalogs and all other types of promotional campaigns na pwede mong gamitin. Yung mail order catalogs kasi kwan yan di ba parang yung mga subscription, ganun. So, either ng magazine mo, ganyan. So, that's still going to be expensed. Tapos, relocation cost expense din ng mga yan. So, para lang hindi magka-problema. Okay? So, for this purpose, when incurred, or the term when incurred means when the entity receives the related goods or services. Okay? So, if the entity has a prepayment for the above items, then yung prepayment, asset muna siya. Tapos, kapag nagamit na natin yung mga prepaid items relating to these items, then magiging expense na siya. Okay, so ganun lang naman yan. Okay, so malapit-lapit na tayo. Actually, medyo madami lang kasing concept talaga ang intangible asset. So initial measurement, no problem, at cost lang naman talaga. Just like property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so kaya nga tayo nag-focus dun sa iba't ibang cost associated with preparing intangible assets kasi at cost nga yung recognition niya initially. Okay? Tapos, subsequent to initial measurement or subsequent measurement of the asset, similar to property, plant, and equipment, you can choose either the cost model or the revaluation model. Okay? However, later on, you will encounter na in most of the textbooks or in most of the problems that you will encounter, wala kang makikitang revaluation model. There are reasons kung bakit hindi yan pwede. Okay, explain natin in detail later on. Okay, so anyway, going back to the subsequent measures or measurements natin. Cost model tayo, yung normal lang. Cost less accumulated amortization and impairment losses. Hindi depreciation ang term na ginagamit kapag intangible asset. Amortization. Kasi basically, hindi mo naman pwedeng i-depreciate ang item na walang physical substance. Okay? For the revaluation model, okay, an intangible asset will be carried at the revalued amount, okay, based on fair value. Based on fair value. So, ibig sabihin, di ba, yung revaluation natin ngayon, okay, actually, ganun din lang naman sa PPE, based on fair value siya, okay, less any subsequent amortization and impairment losses, only if, okay, ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina, only if fair value can be determined by reference to an active market. Yan. So, i-explain na natin ngayon yung dahilan kung bakit wala kang masyadong na-encounter or if not, wala kang ma-encounter na question, particularly in Philippine CPA board examinations, na gumagamit ng revaluation model ang intangible asset. Kasi first of all, in the Philippines, there is no such thing as an active market for intangible assets. Wala tayong active market niyan, okay? Yung Intellectual Property Office, hindi yan active market. Yan ay lugar para magpa-register ng intangible assets. Okay? So, wala tayong active market na magiging basis ng fair value ng intangible assets. Okay? Kaya nga, hindi siya pwedeng gamitan ng revaluation model. Okay? So, yun yung isang dahilan. Okay? So, actually, yan yung pinaka-main na dahilan. Kaya wala talaga. Okay? Yun. Okay, such active markets are expected to be uncommon for intangible assets. Ayun na, i-explain pa na lalo. Di ba? Wala naman talagang ganyan. Okay? Examples where they might exist, okay? Yung sa mga production quotas, fishing licenses, taxi licenses, yung mga ganyan. Pero kasi, kahit sa Philippines, wala itong active market eh. Kasi this is actually monitored by the government. Okay? So, kung monitored by the government, alangan naman gawin nilang negosyo, active market, di ba? Lang naman gawin nilang negosyo tong mga to. Kaya usually, wala pa rin tayong revaluation model kasi hindi mo naman pwedeng, ang tawag dito, hindi mo naman pwedeng gawin na gagawing pagkakakitaan ng gobyerno yung mga yan. Kasi ang purpose kung bakit may quotas, may licenses, yung government is for regulation and not necessarily for selling it, di ba? So parang kung ang labas pala, itong mga yan ay pwede palang mabili, edi ang mangyari ngayon dyan, edi labas lang ng labas ng licenses, edi sobrang dami na ng taxi, masosobrahan naman yung fishing sa dagat, ganyan. Okay, yung production quotas, baka naman mag-overproduction tayo, ganyan, edi hindi din maganda. Kaya walang active market talaga. Okay? So, kaya mapapansin mo din, yung mga taxi operators, kapag ayaw na nilang mag-operate, usually, ang ginagawa, tina-transfer lang yung license na na-acquire nila papunta doon sa bibili. Okay? Or kung ayaw na nilang ituloy, ida-drop nila yung license. So, in such a way, kapag dinrap na nila yung license, pwede na ulit i-reissue ng gobyerno, usually ng LTFRB, ng LTFRB, yung dinrap na license, pwede nilang i-grant or pwede nilang ibenta or ibigay sa ibang gustong mag-operate ng taxi. So, ganoon siya. Okay? Kaya regulated yan. Kaya hindi siya pwedeng maging active market. Yun. Diba? Kasi hindi nga talaga siya efficient kapag gagawin mo siyang bentahan lang ng bentahan. Diba? So, isipin mo na lang, kunyari, sa Baguio area pa lang, o sige, magbenta tayo ng taxi license as much as we can. Hindi ang dami ng may taxi. O din ang mangyari ngayon, punong-puno na ng mga kalasada, ganyan. Edi it's not going to be beneficial also. Okay? So, yun lang naman. Next, under the revaluation model, revaluation increase are recognized in other comprehensive income similar to PPE and accumulated in the revaluation surplus account within equity except to the extent that they reverse a revaluation decrease previously recognized in profit or loss. Okay? If the revaluated intangible has a finite life, ibig sabihin determinable yung life niya, and is therefore being amortized, the revalued amount is amortized also. So, yung ganun din, parang yung ginagawa din natin sa ating property, plant, and equipment. Okay? So, since napag-usapan na rin yung life, okay, ito na yung di-discuss natin in detail. Okay? So, yung general classification, ang intangible asset mo ay pwedeng indefinite life, pwede ring finite life. Okay? Pag sinabing indefinite life, okay, take note, ang term na ginamit is indefinite, hindi infinite. Okay? Indefinite. In other words, hindi mo ma-assess or hindi mo ma-estimate kung ilan ba talaga or gaano ba talaga kahaba yung life ng ating asset. Okay? So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng indefinite life. Kapag finite life naman, ibig sabihin, pwede mong ma-estimate or pwede mong malaman kung hanggang kailan lang ang period niyan. It's either by regulation of the government or by determining yung mismong mismong estimate ng company. Okay? Like in example, yung patent 20 years lang. Okay? Yung copyright 50 years from the death of the original composer, di ba? So yung mga ganun ang mga items niya. So infinite yung life niya. Okay? So parang ganun. Next, so moving on, measurement subsequent to acquisition ng intangible assets with finite lives. So dahil sinabi na nga kanina na i-amortize siya, paano mo i-amortize? Okay? So the cost less the residual value of an intangible asset with finite life should be amortized on a systematic basis over that particular life. So how are you going to amortize it? So the main rule is to amortize it based on the pattern of benefits that you expect from the asset or from the intangible asset. So pag sinabi nating pattern of benefit, yan yung depende, ang usual na basis mo dyan, yung cash flow, yung revenue generating capacity niya. Okay? So ganun. So ratio and proportion. Okay? Yun yung usual na ginagawa. Pero ang concern mo, paano kapag wala daw pattern? So kapag walang pattern, straight line. Assume mo na lang na pare-parehas yung benefits na makukuha mo over the life. Okay? The amortization charge will be recognized in profit or loss. Unless another IFRS requires that it be included in the cost of another asset. So kumbaga parang yung nagastos mong intangible asset is capitalizable to another asset. So kumbaga parang paano pag ginamit ko yung intangible asset ko para makapag-produce ako ng inventory or para makapag-produce ako ng PPE. Then, instead na i-expense ko yung amortization, ika-capitalize ko doon sa asset na related. Ganun lang. Okay? Tapos, the amortization period should be reviewed at least annually. Okay? Para malaman mo kung same pa rin ba yung pattern ng benefit, same pa rin ba yung life talaga niya, or hindi na ganun. Okay? Tapos, expected future reductions in selling prices could be indicative of a higher rate of consumption of the future economic benefits embodied in the asset. Thus, it should be a basis of the changing or the change in the estimate also of the pattern of benefits. Okay, so yun yung item natin dyan. It can also be a basis of impairment later on. So again, ang problema natin dyan, wala kasing specific na guide ang standard kung paano mo gagawin yan, yung reduction. So again, babalik tayo sa concept ng professional judgment. Okay? Okay. Next, the standard contains a rebuttable presumption that a revenue-based amortization method for intangible assets is inappropriate. Okay? However, there are limited circumstances when the presumption can be overcome. Okay? Rebuttable presumption na hindi pwedeng gumamit ng revenue-based amortization. Okay? Pero pwede mong gamitin pa rin yon, yung revenue-based. Yung sinasabi ko, di ba, na yung amortization mo depende dun sa revenue generating capacity ng isang entity or ng isang intangible asset. So, pwede mo siyang gamitin, okay, in these cases. Yung first is, the intangible asset is expressed as a measure of revenue, and it can be demonstrated that revenue and the consumption of economic benefits of the intangible assets are highly correlated. So, paano mo ulit ipoprove yan? Bahala na yung accountant mo, bahala na yung research and development director mo kung paano niya ipoprove yan. Okay? Kasi mas maganda nga yung ganito kasi direct matching. I-match mo yung revenue doon sa expenses or yung pag-amortize mo ng intangible asset. But again, the concept there is how are you going to prove that nga? Na highly related nga yung revenue na na-generate mo doon sa pagko-consume mo ng economic benefit. Okay, so medyo mahirap nga lang siya. Pero kung kaya mong i-prove or kung kaya mong i-persuade yung mga yung ang tawag dito, yung mga users na tama nga yung ginagawa mo, di pwede. Okay? Yan. Note muna tayo, the guidance on expected future reduction in selling prices and the clarification regarding the revenue-based depreciation or amortization method were introduced by clarification of acceptable methods of depreciation and amortization which applies to annual periods beginning on or after January 1, 2016. This is an IFRIC. Okay? Although hindi kasi natin siya i-discuss kasi hindi naman talaga siya generally covered ng standard. Pero if you are interested to look for that particular IFRIC, nandun naman siya sa ifrs.org and nasa IAS Plus din siya. Okay. So, since nandun na rin tayo sa revenue-based amortization, example na tayo dito. Okay? So, example tayo. IAS 38 notes, okay, that in the circumstances in which the predominant limiting factor that is inherent in the intangible asset is the achievement of a revenue threshold, the revenue to be generated can be an appropriate basis for amortization of the asset. So the standard provides the following examples where revenue to be generated might be an appropriate basis for amortization. So first, a concession to explore and extract gold from a gold mine which is limited to a fixed amount of revenue generated from the extraction of gold. So ibig sabihin parang ang mangyari, nagkaroon ng exploration right, tapos ang sinabi is, itong right na to is only applicable until maka-extract kayo ng ganito kadaming gold. O ganun lang yung sinabi niya. Eh di ang labas ngayon dyan, kung hanggang doon lang pala yung pwede mong ma-extract, kahit sabihin mong madami pang ma-extract doon na gold, okay? Eh di ang mangyari dyan, yung exploration right mo, or yung intangible asset mo relating to the exploration, pwede mo siyang i-amortize using the pattern or using the percentage na na-extract mo out of the total. Diba? So, pwede mong gawin yun. Next, a right to operate a toll road that is based on a fixed amount of revenue generation from cumulative toll charges. Pero usually, hindi kasi nangyari yan. Diba? Parang example, yung mga NLEX, SLEX, yung mga TIPLEX, yung mga yan, lahat ng mga expressway na yan, that is under a BOT or Build Operate Transfer agreement with the government. In other words, ang general requirement kasi is after 50 years, ito transfer na yun sa gobyerno. Okay, so yun yung concept niyan. However, ang regular requirement kasi dyan is not based on year, hindi based sa revenue eh. Diba based sa years. Kaya hindi mo pwedeng magamit yung revenue-based amortization. Pero, kung kunyari, ang naging agreement is yung right mo to operate that expressway is only applicable until maka-generate ka ng, sabihin natin, 1 billion pesos. So kapag naka 1 billion pesos ka na, wala ka ng right over that expressway, ita-transfer mo na yan sa government. E di ang mangyayari, pwedeng i-amortize nung nag-develop ng TPLEX or nag-develop ng expressway yung kanilang right to operate using the revenue base. Okay, so kunyari, year 1, nakakumita sila ng 20 million, ganyan. E di 20 million divided by 1 billion times the cost, edi yun na yung magiging amortization. Okay, pero yun nga kasi, basically, mahirap mangyari yung mga to kasi hindi naman ganun ang usual na requirement. Pero kapag nagawa yun, edi pwede. Okay? Kapag based siya sa peso values or doon sa expected na extraction, ganun, pwede pa rin. Okay? The asset should also be assumed for or assessed for impairment in accordance with IAS 36 later on. Okay. Medyo malapit na, disclosure na to eh. Next, measurement to subsequent to acquisition. Doon naman na tayo sa mga indefinite useful lives. So, bago natin puntahan to, may nakalimutan kasi tayong i-discuss. 'Di ba kapag ikaw ay nag-amortize, okay? 'Di ba may residual value? Okay. So, nakalimutan ko i-explain. Wait lang. Residual value of intangible asset. Okay. As provided by the standard kasi, okay, the residual value, wait lang, the residual value is assumed to be 0 unless, first bullet point, ba't siya biglang nagka-capitalize? Okay. A residual value. Kulit naman nito. Ala! Ayusin ko lang to. Ay, mamaya ko lang ayusin. A residual value can be determined based on values in an active market or an amount is is promised, hindi mismo ito yung term, promised by a third party. Okay? So basically, ito kasi yung concept natin sa residual value. Kaya kung mapapansin mo rin later on, kapag ikaw ay nagsosolve ng problems, usually yung residual value ng intangible asset ay 0 siya. Okay? Kasi, ang mangyari dyan is, ang provision kasi ng standard, pwede ka lang mag-recognize ng residual value kung either number 1, meron kang basis ng residual value na manggagaling din sa active market, similar to your revaluation model. Yung problema, wala naman tayong active market ng intangible asset, di more so, wala tayong pagkukunan ng residual value. Tapos second, kahit walang active market, pwede ka pa rin mag-recognize ng residual value kung merong third party na nag-commit or nag-promise na at the end of the life of the asset is bibilhin niya yung intangible asset. So parang ganun yung labas niya. Ay ang problema, wala rin namang in the usual business setup. Kung yung intangible asset ay wala ng economic value or wala ng useful life, bakit naman ako as a third party magpa-promise na bilhin pa rin yun? Wala nang akong benefit na makukuha dun, di ba? So, ewan ko na lang, kung malay mo, may mauto ka, may naloko kang ganyan, tapos sinabi ng third party, o sige, bibilhin ko yan, pag end na ng useful life niya, bibilhin ko pa rin yung asset na yan, ganyan. Ang mangyari ngayon doon, pwede na siyang magkaroon ng residual value. Or, there is also a possibility na yung third party, willing siyang bilhin yung intangible asset mo after a portion of the useful life has already been consumed. So, kunyari, 20 years ang useful life ng patent, tapos ang agreement nyo dun sa third party, o sige, bilhin mo tong, or ita-transfer ko sa'yo itong intangible asset kapag nagamit ko na siya for 10 years. So, ibig sabihin, yung remaining 10 years, ikaw na ang gagamit. So, ganun siya. Di pwede. So, yung third party, sasabihin nyo, o sige, bibilhin ko yung intangible asset mo at this amount at the end of 10 years. Then, yung kinomit nung third party na price, then that can be used as your residual value. Okay? So, ganun lang. Okay. So, moving on tayo. Yung intangible asset with indefinite life. So, tatandaan mo lang dito, since indefinite yung life niya, hindi siya pwedeng i-amortize. Okay? At dahil hindi siya pwedeng i-amortize, ano lang ang pwede mong gawin sa kanya? Ang pwede mo lang gawin sa kanya is i-subject mo siya sa impairment testing, at least annually. So, to emphasize, an intangible asset with an indefinite useful life should not be amortized. Its useful life should be reviewed each reporting period to determine whether events and circumstances continue to support an indefinite useful life assessment for the asset. If they do not, the change in the useful life assessment from indefinite to finite should be accounted for as a change in accounting estimate. Okay? And the asset should also be assessed for impairment in accordance with IAS 36, which is at least annually. So, yun din lang yung sinabi ko kanina. So, subsequent expenditures tayo. Due to the nature of intangible assets, subsequent expenditures will only rarely meet the criteria for being recognized in the carrying amount of an asset. Kasi, ganito yan. Ang general rule natin, kapag may intangible asset ka na, hindi yan katulad ng property, plant, and equipment na pwedeng magkaroon ng improvement, addition, betterment, yung mga ganyan. Kasi ang intangible asset, kapag nandyan na, all other subsequent cost na pinasok mo dyan sa intangible asset na yan are generally treated as expense only. Kasi, these items or these subsequent costs are only intended to maintain the intangible asset instead of improve it. Okay? So, kung ang purpose ng mga gastos na yan ay for maintenance only, edi parang repairs and maintenance din lang siya in the point of view of a property, plant, and equipment. So, therefore, yung mga subsequent expenditure mo sa intangible asset, it will not be treated as an asset but rather as an expense. Okay? However, ito, subsequent expenditures on brands, mass sales, publishing titles, customer list, and similar items must always be recognized in profit or loss as incurred kasi nga, di ba, internally generated yung mga yan, hindi naman sila magka-qualify as intangible assets, so generally, expense pa rin sila. Di ba? So, ganun lang naman yan. So, when will, or what is a particular case na pwede mong ma-recognize as an asset yung mga subsequent expenditure? So, generally, kung yung subsequent expenditure mo can be treated or can be classified as another intangible asset, then pwede mo siyang i-capitalize. Pero hindi siya doon sa existing intangible asset. Doon na siya sa bago na intangible asset that can qualify from the subsequent expenditure that you are going to incur. Okay? Next, disclosure. So, for each class of intangible asset, disclose the following. So, kung mapapansin mo, itong mga to, parang ito din yung nasa property, plant, and equipment. Okay? Na iba lang yung term instead na depreciation, amortization siya. Okay? And of course, we are hoping na walang masyadong lumabas or walang lumabas na question for disclosures in your board examinations. Okay? So what are the disclosure? Useful life and amortization rate. Take note for each class of intangible asset. So ganun din. Pag sinabing each class, patent, lahat ng patent. Copyright, lahat ng copyright. Trademark, lahat ng trademark. Franchise, lahat ng franchise. Ganun. Okay? So anyway, useful life and amortization rate, amortization method, gross carrying amount, accumulated amortization and impairment losses, line items in the income statement in which amortization is included, reconciliation, okay, of particular items kapag nagkaroon ng addition. Okay? Tapos, pero pag sinabing additions, business combinations will be separately recognized. Okay? Kasi hindi siya katulad ng normal additions lang. Assets held for sale, retirement and other disposals, revaluations, impairments, reversals of impairments, amortization, okay, foreign exchange differences and other charges or other changes, okay? So, mga yan, i-disclose mo pa rin yan. Basis for determining that an intangible asset has indefinite life kasi kailangan mo ang i-prove. Description of any carrying amount of individually material intangible assets. So kapag meron kang significant intangible asset na kailangan mo i-disclose kasi mas malaki yung amount niya or mas significant siya as compared to others. Certain special disclosures about intangible assets acquired by way of government grants. Information about intangible assets whose title is restricted. Contractual commitments to acquire intangible assets. So lahat yan ay i-disclose. Okay? In addition, okay, bago tayo pumunta sa mga conceptual questions. In addition, disclosures should be provided for intangible assets carried at revalued amount. So pansinin mo separate disclosure yan kasi it is a crucial disclosure eh. Kasi 'di ba? Kung rare ang pagre-revalue ng intangible asset, paano nangyari na nakagamit ka ng revaluation model sa isang intangible asset mo? So kaya yan ay kailangan ng additional disclosure. Kasi explain mo ng gusto yan. And the amount of research and development expenditure recognized as an expense in the current period. Okay? So, kailangan mo rin yan i-disclose kasi kailangan nating ma-determine na tama nga na ine-expense mo yan ay baka dapat capitalize na siya. Okay? So, that's the end of our concepts and theories relating to intangible assets. Okay, so we move on to the conceptual questions. For us to be able to check on the concepts relating to the standard. Okay? So let's start first with question number 1. Residual value is specifically the estimated amount that you would currently obtain from disposal of the asset net of disposal cost. So the reason why that is the first conceptual question is because we emphasized a while ago na yung residual value ng intangible asset can only be determined based on an active market or based on a commitment from a third party to acquire the intangible asset. Okay? So, yun din kasi kailangan nating maintindihan na ang residual value is not always available. If not, it is rarely available doon sa intangible assets natin. Number 2, useful life of an asset refers to the life while it is available for use in the firm. So yun yung useful life niya. Ang useful life ng isang entity or ng isang asset, particularly intangible asset, could either be the economic life or the legal life. Okay? So pag sinabi natin economic life, yun yung period na pwede pa siyang mag-provide ng economic benefits, or yung legal life, which is yung period na inaalaw ng government or inaalaw ng legal requirements na magamit mo yung asset. Okay? So, yun yung number 2 natin. Number 3, elements of cost. Ano yung mga elements of cost natin? Purchase price, katulad din ng property, plant and equipment, meron yan. Import duties, kapag nanggaling pa sa ibang bansa, in-import mo yung intangible asset. Pero usually parang weird, no? Paano magkakaroon ng import duties wala kang physical Pero basically kasama pa rin yan. Non-refundable purchase taxes, yes, considered pa rin yan. Pero yung overheads of purchasing department relating to the purchase of asset, hindi nakasama yan. Okay? So, similarly, kasama yan sa ating cost, even for intangible asset, provided ma-justify mo na meron nga talaga yun. So, sa question number 3, ang sagot ay 1 to 3. Okay? Question number 4, directly attributable cost include. Ano yung mga kasama sa directly attributable cost? So, we have professional fees and legal fees. Yung administration and other general overhead cost is not directly attributable cost. This is only applicable, or this can only be capitalizable if you can prove that you use this for the construction or for bringing the asset to its intended location and condition. Pero generally, hindi yan kasama. So, ang sagot ay 1 and 2 lang. Okay? Next, question number 5. The following costs should be accounted for as. Okay? So, yung startup cost, training cost, relocating cost, or reorganizing cost, na-explain na natin yan kanina dun sa taas, yan ay ine-expense. Okay? Number 6. If payment for an asset is deferred beyond normal credit terms, any additional payment above the cash cost of the asset will be accounted for as borrowing cost. Katulad din ng ating property, plant, and equipment. Number 7, if one or more assets are exchanged for a new asset, the new asset is valued at fair value. Okay? So, in exchange natin, so pwedeng mangyari din dito yung exchange na katulad ng with commercial substance, wherein you're going to use the fair value of asset given up plus cash paid minus cash received. Okay? Tapos kapag yung exchange is cannot be valued with using fair value, then you're going to use the cost or the carrying value of the asset given up. Okay? So, yun yung sagot natin sa number 8. Number 9, an undertaking can choose either the cost option or the revaluation option as its accounting policy, and it must apply the chosen model to the entire class of the asset. Okay? Next, using the cost option, anong gagawin mo ulit doon? Cost minus accumulated depreciation or amortization in this case kasi tayo ay intangible asset, and impairment loss. Question 11, using the revaluation option, can fair values be estimated if there is no market-based evidence? Ang sagot ay no. Di ba? Ang concept natin sa fair value, okay? 'Di ba? Although ang fair value, pag pinag-uusapan natin ang fair value under IFRS 13, ang pinag-uusapan natin diyan ay yung may level 1, level 2, level 3 inputs. Pero specifically for IAS 38, ang sinabi, ang basis lang dapat ng fair value ay yung level 1 input or market-based lang. Okay? So ibig sabihin, hindi ka pwedeng gumamit ng revaluation model kung ang fair value mo is not market-based. So, ang sagot sa number 11 ay no. Okay. Next, number 12. Revaluation are required, okay, when fair values change or other expectancies are changed, okay? Or whenever there are specific changes that's going to happen to the value of an asset. Okay, so the answer there is number 3. Okay, so yung revaluation hindi naman kailangang annually yan, hindi naman laging every 3 or 5 years yan, basta whenever there is a change. Okay, so pwedeng annually, pwedeng ang mas madalas pa sa annually. So pwedeng kung talagang fluctuating yan, pwedeng more than once sa isang taon. Okay, so basta ang concept ng revaluation, mag-revalue ka kapag may change in the fair value. 13. When an item is revalued, any accumulated amortization at the date of the revaluation is treated in which of the following ways? Okay? So, nagkaroon daw ng revaluation. Okay? So, restated proportionately. Okay, madali lang naman to. Yung question number 13, discuss lang kasi dito kung ano yung pwede mong gawing application ng revaluation mo. Diba, diniscuss natin dalawang klase ng revaluation method. Pwedeng proportionate method or proportional method, pwede ring elimination method. So, ang sagot sa number 13 is either 1 or 2. Okay? Kasi pwedeng proportionate, pwedeng elimination method. Tapos na-discuss na rin naman natin kung ano ang concept niyan. Kapag proportionate method, an increase in the or a revaluation will result to a proportional increase in the cost of the asset and the accumulated amortization or depreciation. Tapos kapag elimination method, you're going to reduce first the amount of the accumulated amortization, and then if there are still unrecognized portion of the revaluation, it will be added to the carrying value of the asset. Okay, next, we go to question 14. Examples of separate classes of intangible assets are, okay, brand names, masters and publishing titles, computer software, licenses, copyrights, intangible assets under development. Wala na to. Tapos, office equipment, canteen equipment. Okay, ang sagot ay 1 to 7 lang. Hanggang dito lang tayo sa recipes, formulae, models, designs, and prototypes. Hindi natin isasama itong intangible assets under development kasi hindi mo alam kung yan ay na-achieve na ang technical or technological feasibility. Okay, so hindi pa muna kasama yan. Okay, next. Okay, sige, moving on tayo. Okay, so for question 15. May a class of asset be revalued on a rolling basis. Okay? So the concept of rolling basis is, in other terms, parang continuing basis or instantly. Ibig sabihin kapag may change na may change na nangyari, revalue agad. Ganun yung concept niya. So the answer there is no. Kasi it is not going to be economical or it is going to be impractical for a particular entity to do revaluation of an asset on a rolling basis. Okay? Kasi ang concept niyan, we only do revaluation on a periodic basis. So kung gumagawa ka ng report ng annual, okay, as much as possible, at least annually gawa ka na ng report. Kung gumagawa ka ng interim report, edi pwede kang mag-revalue ng asset mo doon sa mga interim financial statements mo. So hindi pwedeng rolling basis na every time mayroong update or may bagong fair value, i-revalue ka agad. Okay? Because it is going to be impractical for a particular entity. So, ang sagot dyan, no. Okay? Hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng rolling basis ng revaluation. Periodic lang tayo or at a certain point of time. Okay? Next, 16. If an asset carrying amount is increased by revaluation, the increase is, number 3, taken to revaluation surplus directly without being recorded in the income statement. So, basically, paano mo lang tinitreat ang revaluation surplus. Okay? 17, if an asset carrying amount is decreased by revaluation, the decrease should be, so, bumaba yung carrying amount because of revaluation, it should be expense, okay? After mong ibawas doon sa existing na revaluation surplus kung sakali man. Pero generally, it's going to be expense kapag hindi na kayang i-absorb ng revaluation surplus. Pero basically, yun din naman yung concept niya. Pag nagkaroon ng decrease in the carrying amount, before mong i-recognize as expense, ibangga mo muna sa revaluation surplus kung mayroon. Pero general rule, wala naman kasing sinabi dito na may existing revaluation surplus, so expense na lang. Okay? 18. Transfers of amounts between revaluation reserve and retained earnings are allowed. Okay, so in other words, paano mo gagawin yung realization ng iyong revaluation surplus? The answer is number 2. On assets disposed in each period, being the difference between the depreciation charge or amortization charge on a revalued amount and the depreciation of the cost amount. Okay, so in other words, to explain further, no, yung paglilipat kasi between revaluation reserve or revaluation surplus papuntang retained earnings, mangyayari lang yan kapag number 1, nagkaroon ng disposal, number 2, nagkaroon ng depreciation or amortization ng asset, okay? Or, actually yun lang, dalawa lang naman talaga yun, kapag na-realize or nagkaroon ng piecemeal realization through depreciation. So yun lang yung mga mangyayari dyan. So the answer for number 18 is yung number 2, okay? Ganun yung magiging treatment natin sa movement from revaluation reserve to retained earnings. 19, amortization charge for a period is recorded in the income statement, of course. Okay? Or as part of another asset, yung diniscuss natin kanina, pwede siyang maging part ng other asset kapag ginamit mo yung intangible asset for purposes of producing or creating another asset. Okay? So, 19 is number 3. 20, changes in the estimated useful life should be accounted for as but B dapat yan. Okay? It will be accounted for under IAS 8. Okay? Or basically ito yung accounting policy changes in accounting estimates and prior period errors. Tama lang. 21, the carrying value of an asset is 10 million. The fair value is 12 million. Do you continue amortization? Okay? So, carrying amount is 10 million, fair value is 12 million. Okay? So, tinatanong kung mag-amortize ka pa rin ba? Siyempre, ang sagot ay yes. Kasi ang amortization is not based on it is not limited by the changes in fair value, but rather it is based on the asset having a finite or determinable life. So, are you still going to amortize an asset kahit tumaas yung value? Of course, kasi particularly kung naka-cost model ka lang naman, the fair value will be irrelevant in the computation of your amortization. So, the answer there is 2, yes, until the end of the useful life. Number 22, the carrying value of your asset equals the residual value. Do you continue to amortize? The answer is no na. Okay? Kasi, di ba, yung residual value, kung yan ay nakaset na amount, hindi ka na pwedeng mag-recognize beyond the residual value because that is already an amount that is that is supposed to be realized later on upon disposal. Okay? So, kapag nandun na, residual value na, hindi ka na mag-amortize. Pero, pwede bang ma-impair? Yes. Okay? So, iba ang impairment sa amortization. So, you will end amortization, but it is possible that you can still impair or subject the asset to impairment kung talagang impaired siya. Okay? 23, your asset has a residual value. Do you continue to amortize it? Yes pa rin, di ba? So, magkaroon lang naman residual value, pero i-consider mo lang yung residual value from the in the computation of your amortization. 24. In determining the useful life of an asset, what are you going to consider? Expected usage? Yes, because it can be a basis of the pattern of benefits. Public information on similar types of assets? Yes, kasi this can be a basis later on if the asset has an indefinite life or a finite or determinable life. Technical or commercial obsolescence? Yes, because this will be a basis kung isa-subject mo pa ba siya talaga sa amortization or malalaman mo kung gagamitin mo ba yung legal life or gagamitin mo lang yung expected na economic life niya. Okay? Tapos, legal or similar limits to the use, yung legal life, syempre kasama yun. Level of knowledge of operations of the asset, that's not going to be relevant. Okay? So, basically, we're simply looking at the useful life of the asset. So, 1 to 4 can be a determinant of the useful life. It is not going to be affected by number 5. Question number 25. A variety of amortization methods can be used. These methods should include the straight line method, the diminishing balance, the unit of production method, and the choice of the depreciation method is governed by the, ano ulit ang basis natin sa pag-amortize? Yung pattern of consumption of the benefits. So, ang sagot sa 25 ay number 3. 26. The carrying amount of an item shall be derecognized or it will be written out of the balance sheet kapag nagkaroon ng disposal or kapag wala ng future economic benefit, similar to other assets. So, the answer for 26 is either. 27. Research cost can be capitalized? Never. Okay? Hindi siya pwedeng makapitalize because research cost is always expense. Okay? And of course, this is not talking about the research cost in a business combination. Kasi research and development cost in a business combination, again, to emphasize, yun ay magiging separate asset later on kasi nanggaling siya sa business combination. Next, 28. If there is a third party willing to buy your asset at the end of its useful life but no active market for the asset, then number 3, the residual value is fully valued. Diba? So, sinabi ko kanina, ang residual value natin, pwedeng galing sa active market or pwedeng galing sa third party. Eh kung may third party commitment naman, the residual value is still going to be considered based on the amount that is willing to be paid by the third party. Okay. 29, the definition of an intangible asset comprises. Ano ulit yun? Identifiability, control, at saka economic benefit, di ba? So, hindi kasama yung residual value. So, ang sagot natin ay number 2. 30, separability. Ano ibig sabihin ng separability? Di ba pag sinabi natin separability, kailangan pwede siyang maging subject ng isang transaction without affecting any other assets. Okay? So, ang sagot dyan ay hindi pwedeng sagot yung 2 and 3. Obviously, number 1 requires distinction from goodwill kasi goodwill is unidentifiable, di ba? Pero bakit hindi pwedeng sagot yung 2 and 3? Kasi for identifiability, hindi naman necessarily na separable, di ba? Pwedeng nag-arise lang siya sa contractual or legal rights, pwede pa rin. Okay? Tapos require separate ownership, hindi ownership ang habol natin, kailangan siya ay controlled lang. Okay? So, ang sagot sa number 30 ay number 1. 31 tayo, control is. Okay, so paano mo ma-obtain ng control? Kapag meron kang power to obtain benefit and power to restrict access. Okay, so number 3 na yan. Both 1 and 2. Okay, so that is the concept of control. 32, future benefits include revenue, cost savings, residual value, hindi. So, cost savings hanggang revenue at cost savings lang tayo. So, answer for number 32 is number 1. 33, the cost of an internally generated asset includes internally generated. Okay. Expenditure on material services used in generating the asset, yes. The employment of cost of personnel directly engaged in production, yes. Expenditure directly attributable to the asset. Okay. Overhead that are necessary to generate the asset. Okay, ito di ba kanina hindi yung mga ang tawag dito, yung mga administrative and general overhead, hindi yun kasama kasi purchase. Pero kapag internally generated, ginagawa mo siya, pwede na ngayon, kasama na siya. Profit margin of course hindi pa rin. Okay, hindi naman kasama sa cost yan. So ang sagot ay 1 to 4 lang. Okay, take note yung overhead kasi, it is only considered as a portion of cost if it is relating to the preparation of an asset. Pero kapag purchase lang, wala namang significant na contribution ng general and administrative overhead. Kaya hindi siya kasama sa capitalization. Okay, 34 tayo. Expenditure on an intangible item that was initially recorded as an expense in previous interim or annual statement should not be reinstated or should not be recorded as part of cost. So the answer there is number 1. Ito yung pinag-usapan nating reinstatement kanina. Bawal magkaroon ng reinstatement ng previously expense cost papunta sa asset. Next, intangible assets are initially recorded at cost. Alam na natin yan. Cost tapos subsequent cost model or revaluation model. Okay, so those are our conceptual questions. We are now going to proceed with the theory questions. So, theory question number 1 tayo. An entity shall choose either the cost model or revaluation model in its accounting policy in measuring the intangible asset. Which statement is correct? So, statement number 1 explains to you the concept of how to apply the cost model, and the second statement provides you with the definition and basis of the the method of using the revaluation model. So the answer for question number 1 will be letter B, both 1 and 2. So ine-explain lang naman, dinedefine lang nila yung cost model and revaluation model. Number 2, which is not within the definition of an intangible asset. So ibig sabihin, hinahanap natin yung mga hindi kasama sa scope ng intangible asset. So, yung letter A, held for use in the production or supply of goods for rental or to others or for administrative purposes. So, obviously, hindi na talaga yan intangible asset kasi yan ay magiging PPE na kasi yan. Okay, so obviously, yan na yung sagot. Yung letter B, identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance, pasok pa rin sa intangible asset yan. Resource controlled by an enterprise as a result of past events is a resource from which future economic benefits are expected to flow to the enterprise. So, pasok pa rin yan sa definition ng intangible asset natin. So, actually, ito yung main criteria Yung B, C, and D yan yung main requirements para maging intangible asset siya. Yung letter A, hindi yan kasama sa doon sa tatlo. Okay? So, di ba? Identifiability, future control, at saka future economic benefits. Number 3, which is incorrect concerning the recognition and measurement of an intangible asset? Incorrect, incorrect. Okay? So, tingnan natin kasi ang suggested answer is letter D, but siya naging incorrect. If payment for an intangible asset is deferred beyond normal credit terms, its cost is equal to the total payments over the credit period. Mali. 'Di ba? Yung total payment mo, ibabawas mo lang doon yung principal component or yung cash price equivalent or yung present value component ng payments. Yung difference will be borrowing cost or expense as interest. So the answer for number 3 is letter D. Tama lang yan. Yan yung incorrect statement. Number 4, the appropriate method for amortizing intangible asset is best described by which of the following? Okay? So, sabi sa letter A, the straight line method unless the pattern in which the asset's economic benefits are consumed by the enterprise can be determined reliably. So, in other words, parang iniba lang yung pagkakastate kasi ang sinabi sa standard, di ba? Hanapin mo yung pattern of benefit. Pag walang pattern na makuha, mag-straight line method ka. So, yun din lang naman yung ibig sabihin ng question or ng option letter A. So, yun na yung sagot natin. Letter A ang sagot sa number 4. Number 5, the best definition of useful life in an intangible asset is, okay, useful life. Okay? Is it the legal life of the intangible asset? No, because it is only one basis of useful life. The period over which management believes the intangible asset will contribute to the revenue-producing process, 20 years. The period over which the cost of the asset can be deducted for income tax purposes. So, ang sagot natin sa useful life ay letter B. This encompasses the legal life and the economic life. Okay? Kasi generally, kapag mayroon pa siyang economic life, makakatulong pa siya sa revenue-producing process ng isang entity. Kapag pasok pa sa legal life, you still have the legal right to use the asset to generate revenue. So, parehas din lang. Yun din yung item natin. So, the answer for number 5 is letter B. Number 6, which of the following factors should not be considered in estimating the useful life of an intangible asset? Legal, regulatory, and contractual provisions, expected action by competitor. So, this is yung obsolescence at saka yung competition. Typical product life cycle of the asset, basically, pasok din dito yung pag-estimate natin ng useful life based on the revenue generating capacity. So, the answer is letter C, residual value. Hindi yan kasama sa estimation ng useful life. Next, number 7, it is a systematic allocation of the cost of an intangible asset, less any residual value as an expense over the asset's useful life. Ang tawag doon ay amortization. Kapag PPE, depreciation. Depletion is for wasting assets. Realization is basically it's either the recognition of the cash value of the asset, yung realization, or basically yan yung makukuha mo na or ma-realize mo na yung value ng asset either through piecemeal realization or the actual sale or disposal of the asset. Okay? So, yun yung item natin sa number 7. Number 8. Okay. Number 8 tayo, the residual value of an intangible asset should be presumed 0 unless, di ba sinabi na natin kanina, 0 ang residual value unless meron tayong basis from an active market or meron tayong commitment from a third party. So, ang sagot sa number 8, actually ang sagot dapat is either 1 or 2. Either 1 or 2, pero wala kasing nakalagay. So, both 1 and 2 is still acceptable. Hindi naman kasi neither eh. So, letter A pa rin ang sagot. So, ang best answer is either 1 or 2. Pero, since hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na 1 lang or 2 lang, then we can still consider both 1 and 2 as an acceptable answer. Okay? Next, 9. Which one of the following is not a component of the cost of internally generated intangible asset? Okay, parang yung nandun din sa taas kanina. So, cost of material services, yes. Cost of employee benefits, yes. Fees to register the asset, yes. Expenditure on training staff. O, training cost specifically provided in our standard, hindi yan kasama sa cost ng intangible asset. Number 10, which statement is incorrect concerning internally generated intangible assets? Incorrect, no? Incorrect. Okay. So, sabi doon, so ang sagot ay letter D. Check lang natin yung ibang items. To assess whether internally generated intangible asset meets the criteria for recognition, an enterprise classifies the generation of the asset into a research phase and a development phase. Yes. Okay? Kasi hindi naman lahat ng internally generated intangible asset ay hindi ma-recognize. So, depende kung pasok sa research and development phase, tapos technical feasibility, among others. Letter B, the cost of an internally generated asset comprises all directly attributable costs necessary to create, produce, and prepare the asset for intended use. Yes. Internally generated brands, mass sales, publishing titles, customer list, and other similar items should not be recognized as intangible asset. Tama din yan. Letter D, internally generated goodwill may be recognized as intangible asset. Okay, so letter D, obvious na yan because goodwill cannot be recognized for internally generated, or if it is internally generated. It will only be recognized if it is subject to or it is part of a business combination. 11. The following expenditures should be expensed when incurred, except relocation, advertising, organization, advance payments. Okay, so in-emphasize naman to kanina dun sa diniscuss natin. Kapag may advance payment ka, it will still be recognized as a prepayment and will only be expensed kapag nagamit mo na yung benefit from that particular prepayment. So, letter A na yan. 12. A lessee incurred cost to construct office space in a leased warehouse. The estimated useful life of the office is 10 years. The remaining term of the non-renewable lease is 15 years. The cost should be capitalized, syempre, as leasehold improvement and depreciated over 10 years lang kasi useful life. 15 years pa yung non-renewable lease. So, whichever is shorter. So, 10 years tayo. Letter B. Okay, next. Number 13. Research is. So, ano ulit ang research? Diba, research is pertaining to the search for new knowledge or acquiring new knowledge. Okay? Tapos, yung development is the application of the new knowledge that was discovered. So, ang sagot ay, research is number 1 only. Okay, yung number 2 kasi development na yan. Okay, next tayo. 14. If a company constructs a laboratory building to be used as a research and development facility, the cost of the laboratory building is matched against earnings as... Okay, so take note yung ating laboratory building, yan ay in-establish in order for various projects or various research and development activities. So, ang gagawin mo dyan, i-depreciate mo siya, i-allocate mo siya over those research and development or over the years na gagamitin mo siya. Pero kung yan ay laboratory created for a specific project only and cannot be used for other projects subsequent to this project that you are currently doing, then yung cost niyan ay magiging expense outright. Okay? So, depende kung anong purpose ng laboratory building na ginawa mo. So, anyway, ang sagot sa number 14 ay letter B kasi it will be used in various research and development activities. 15. A research and development activity for which the cost should be expensed as incurred is, okay? Engineering follow-through in early phase of commercial production, i-expense mo yan ng letter A. Pero hindi yan considered as research and development kasi nasa commercial production ka na. So, normal, lang yan, normal repairs and maintenance lang yan. Letter B, design, construction, and testing of pre-production prototypes and models. Yes, research and development activity yan. So, i-expense mo yan. Okay? Troubleshooting, commercial production ulit yan. Periodic design changes to existing products. Yung letter A, letter C, and letter D are not research and development activities. Only letter B is attributable to research and development activities and will be expensed kasi walang sinabi kung na-meet na ba ang technological or technical feasibility. Okay. Next, number 16. On January 1, his company has capitalized costs for a new computer software product with an economic life of 5 years. Sales for 2005 were 30% of expected total sales of the software and the pattern of future sales can be measured reliably. At December 31, the software had a net realizable value equal to 90% of capitalized cost. What percentage of the original capitalized cost should be reported as the net amount on the balance sheet? Okay. So, ang concept ngayon kasi dito, malamang ito ay may finite life. So, sa subject natin siya sa amortization. So, the question there is how are you going to amortize it? Is it going to be based on 5 years, or is it going to be based on the pattern, or is it going to be based on the percentage of the revenues over the total expected? Diba sinabi natin kanina, there is a rebuttable presumption na hindi pwedeng gumamit ng amortization based on the pattern of revenues, diba? Ngayon, dito sa problem na to, specific kasing sinabi na yung na-generate mong sales is equal to 30% of the total capability of the software to produce. So therefore, that is the pattern that we can use. Okay? So that is the best estimate of amortization because it is based on a pattern. So we cannot simply use straight line na divided by 5 kasi may pattern naman tayo na pwedeng magamit. Okay? So ang sagot natin sa number 16 is letter A. Okay, 70% kasi 30% was already used. Okay, so yun yung sagot natin dyan. Next tayo. Number 17. The proper accounting for the costs incurred in creating computer software product is 2. So, computer products or computer software is also item of research and development. So, the best there is to capitalize only costs that are incurred after technical feasibility and other requirements are met. So, ang answer natin sa number 17 ay letter B. 18. Which statement is correct regarding the proper accounting treatment for internal use software cost? Okay? Correct. Correct tayo. Sabi doon, preliminary cost should be capitalized as incurred. Application and development cost should be capitalized as incurred. Okay, so the best answer here is letter C kasi for internal use software, 'di ba? So hindi mo naman siya ibebenta. So yung preliminary cost, research cost 'yon. Yung development cost natin, it will be capitalized. Okay, it will be capitalized kasi since that is for internal use already, if you're already developing it for internal use, then you can actually capitalize the development cost because that's basically the start of the technical feasibility. Okay? So the answer for number 18 is letter C, number 2 only. Okay. 19. Which of the following statement is incorrect regarding internal use software? Internal use, di ba? So the application and development cost of internal use software should be amortized on a straight line basis unless another systematic rational basis is more appropriate. Tama lang yan. Internal use software is considered to be software that is marketed as a separate product or as part of a product or process. O di ba internal use? E ba't siya magiging marketed product? E, ibig sabihin, di ba kapag marketed, ibebenta mo? So mali na yung letter B. So yun na yung sagot natin. Tuloy lang natin, letter C. The cost of testing and installing computer hardware should be capitalized as incurred. Software dapat to. Okay. Nagkamali lang ng installing. Ay, tama. The cost of testing and installing dapat to. In the computer hardware. Kasi kasama yun sa pagtetest, di ba, kung gumagana nga siya. Okay. Kasama yan sa cost directly attributable to bringing the asset to its intended location and condition. Letter D, the cost of training and application maintenance should be expense. Okay, kasi this is only for use or for maintenance already. Okay, kapag meron na yung asset. Next, 20. Which following statements is correct regarding the treatment of startup activities? Kung titignan mo kasi yung concept niya, kaya siya kinonsider as incorrect kasi itong mga to, bakit mo i-expense yung cost of raising capital if it is directly attributable to having that debt or having that equity? 'Di ba generally ganito 'yan? Kapag meron kang transaction cost sa pag-raise or sa pag-i-issue ng debt instrument, 'di ba ano 'yon? Kapag ikaw yung may-ari ng instrument plus transaction cost, kapag ikaw yung mayroong utang minus transaction cost. So therefore, hindi siya i-expense kasi i-deduct siya or i-add depende kung financial asset or financial liability. Kapag naman yan ay equity capital, yung cost of raising capital is either treated as, kung yan ay direct, then that's going to be part of share premium. Kung indirect naman, that's going to be part of expense. So, kung if that is a direct cost of raising capital, then that will become part of equity. Kaya incorrect itong item na to. Cost of acquiring or constructing long-lived assets and getting them ready for their intended use should be expense. Mali, capitalizable na to. 21, operating losses incurred during the startup years of a business should be accounted for as a normal operating loss. So letter A ang sagot. 22, which of the following is not a method of computing goodwill? So i-explain natin to lahat. Meron tayong example later on sa problem portion. Itong A, B, and C are all possible methods of computing goodwill. So letter D ang sagot. 23, identifiable intangible assets include all of the following except letter D, goodwill. Itong question na to, malamang hindi pa rin to tinatanggal sa test bank ng board examination. Nung nag-take kami ng board exam, may lumabas na ganyan eh. Same yan yung question niya, tapos goodwill yung sagot. Okay. So hindi pa rin natatanggal sa test bank yan. So pag lumabas, tapos yan ulit yung tanong, edi swerte mo na. At least may dagdag ka ng 1 point agad. Okay? So 23 is letter D. Yan lang ang hindi identifiable. Okay? Yung computer software, trademark, and franchise, kasama yan dun sa line items natin sa taas kanina. Dun sa discussion ng mga intangible assets. Then 24, in accordance with the new international accounting standards, which statement is correct? Intangible assets with finite life are amortized, tama lang. Intangible assets with indefinite life are not amortized but tested for impairment at least annually, tama din lang. So the answer for 24, both 1 and 2 are correct. Okay, so those are our conceptual and theoretical questions relating to intangible assets. Okay, so problem portion tayo ng ating intangible assets. So let's start first with question number 1. So main company incurred 900,000 of research and development cost to develop a product for which a patent was granted on January 2, 20x1. Legal fees and other costs associated with the registration of the patent total 200,000. On July 31, 20x1, Main paid 400,000 for legal fees in a successful defense of the patent. The total amount capitalized for this patent through July 31 should be. Okay? So first and foremost, let's go to the 900,000. The 900,000 did not specifically provide us with a detail on whether these costs were established or these costs were incurred to establish technological feasibility or incurred after technological feasibility was already established. Therefore, we have no choice but to simply regard this or to treat this 900,000 as an expense because we do not have a delineating line on whether it is incurred before or after technological feasibility. Next, the 200,000 legal fees is a cost directly attributable to bringing the asset to its intended location and condition. Therefore, it is a capitalizable cost. Finally, the 400,000 is a cost incurred subsequent to the recognition of an asset or of an intangible asset. And as provided in our discussion a while ago, subsequent costs are only treated as costs that are intended to maintain the asset, and therefore these are treated as an expense outright. It can only become an asset if it is attributable to the development of a separate asset that will be recognized. Therefore, our answer for number 1 is only 200,000. Okay? So that is letter D. Question number 2. Alden Company acquired 3 patents in January 20x1. The patents have different lives as indicated in the following schedule. So we have patent A, B, and C with cost, remaining useful life, and remaining legal life provided. Patent C is believed to be uniquely useful as long as the company retains the right to use it. In June 20X1, the company successfully defended its rights to Patent B. Legal fees of 800,000 were incurred in this action. The company's policy is to amortize intangible assets by the straight line method to the nearest half year. The company reports on a calendar year basis, and the question is what amount of amortization should be recognized in 20X1. Okay. So let's start first with Patent A. Patent A has a cost of 2 million, remaining useful life of 10 years, and remaining legal life of 8 years. Therefore, we are going to use the shorter useful life, which is going to be 8 years. Okay? Which is the legal life. So we will divide 2 million by 8 years and we will get 250,000. Next, Patent B has a cost of 3 million, remaining useful life of 5 years, and legal life of 10 years. So we are going to use the shorter, which is 5 years. And we are going to get amortization of 600,000. We are going to ignore the legal fees of 800,000 here because again, similar to what happened in question number 1, the 800,000 is only a maintenance cost or a cost that is used to maintain our use of the asset. So it is not considered as a capitalizable cost. Patent C is believed to be having an indefinite life. However, there is a legal life of 15 years. So we cannot say or we cannot claim that the asset or that the patent has an indefinite life if there is a legal life. Therefore, our amortization for Patent C will be 6 million divided by 15 years. So if we're going to get the computation of all three assets or all three patents, the total there will be 1,250,000. The answer is letter B. Question number 3. RT Company purchased a patent on January 1, 20X8 for 3,570,000. The patent was being amortized over its remaining legal life of 15 years, expiring on January 1, 2X23. So that's basically after 15 years. During 2X11, RT determined that the economic benefit of the patent would not last longer than 10 years from the date of acquisition. So if that's 20X8, that can only be used until 2X18. What amount should be reported in the balance sheet as patent net of accumulated amortization at December 31, 2X11? So the first thing that we need to do is to compute for the life or the carrying value of the asset. Okay, and dun sa original, okay, based on the original. So we are going to look for the carrying value as of January 1 to X11 kasi dun tayo magsa-start ng change ng ating accounting estimate. So that's going to be 3,570,000 divided by 15 times 12. Bakit times 12 yung ginawa ko? Kasi from 2X8 hanggang 2X11, beginning yan. So 3 years pa lang nagagamit. So 3 years out of 15 years. So meron pang 12 years na naiiwan. Kaya para makuha ko yung carrying value, times 12 ko na lang. Mas madali. So this is already the carrying value on January 1. That's 2,856,000. Next thing that we're going to do is to compute for the amortization for 2X11 considering that the life is only 7 years na lang. Kasi 'di ba, it's not going, the revised life is 10 years from the date of acquisition minus the 3 years na nagamit mo na since 20X8. So that's going to be 7 years remaining. 2,856,000 divided by 7, you will get 408,000. So the carrying amount on January 1, 20X11, 2X11 minus 408,000, which is the amortization for the same year, we will get 2,448,000. That's going to be letter C. So similar to your change in accounting estimate for PPE, ganun din dito. Question number 4. On January 2, main company purchased a patent for a new consumer product for 3 million. At the time of purchase, the patent was valid for 15 years. However, the patent's useful life was estimated to be only 10 years due to the competitive nature of the product. On December 31, the product was permanently withdrawn from sale under governmental order because of a potential hazard, okay, in the product. What amount should main charge against income during 2011, assuming amortization is recorded at the end of such year? So the first thing that we are going to do is to compute first the carrying value on January 1, 2011, which is computed by getting 3 million divided by 10 years, which is the original legal life, multiplied by 7 years, kasi 7 years na lang yun ay iwan after using it for 3 years. So that's going to be 2,100,000. Then we are going to compute for the amortization ng 2011, which is going to be 3 million divided by 10, so 300,000 ulit yun. So meron pa tayong meron tayong 1,800,000 na may iwan, which will then be impaired or written off kasi nga hindi na natin magagamit yung asset because it is already permanently withdrawn from use or from sale because of the health problems or because of the hazard problems. Okay? So ngayon, ang tinatanong sa atin, magkano yung i-recognize na tawag dito, charge sa income statement. So basically, to sum it up, yung buong carrying value nung January 1 to X or 2011, that will be charged to expense kasi i-write off mo lahat yan. It can be in the form of amortization and then impairment kung gusto mo. Pero basically, it will all boil down to it being a loss. Okay? Or being an item recognized as an expense charge in your income statement. So the answer for number 4 is letter C, 2,100,000. Number 5. On January 1, 20X1, Uno Company bought a patent from Maiden Company for 6 million. Uno retained an independent consultant to estimate the patent's life to be indefinite. Its carrying amount in Maiden's accounting records is 4 million. In Uno's December 31, 20X1 balance sheet, what amount should be reported as patent? Okay. So, the concern here in number 15 is the hidden legal life. That's why it was emphasized that the item or the intangible asset is a patent. Which means that if that is a patent, even if it was estimated to have an indefinite useful life or an indefinite economic life, we still need to consider that it has a legal life of 20 years. Therefore, the 6 million needs to be amortized over 20 years without residual value kasi wala namang binigay sa problem, which gives us a 300,000 amortization for 1 year. Therefore, if the amortization is 300,000, it means that we have a we are going to have a useful life, or sorry, a carrying amount of 5,700,000 after 1 year. Okay? So, yun na yung sagot natin dyan. Okay. So, that's letter B. Number 6. On January 1, 20X1, DOS Company signed an agreement to operate as a franchise of B Company for an initial franchise fee of 30 million. Of this amount, 10 million was paid when the agreement was signed and the balance is payable in equal annual payments of 5 million beginning December 31, 20X1. The agreement provides that the down payment is not refundable and no future services are required for the franchisor. So the credit rating indicates that it can borrow at 12% and information provided for present value factors are already given. So the question is, how much is the cost of the franchise? So this is similar to the concept of you being the franchisee acquiring a right to operate a franchise from a particular company known as the franchisor. So in this case, you are going to recognize an intangible asset called franchise. So the question there is, how are you going to compute for that? Madali lang naman yan. So we will simply follow the computation given here. So first of all, you are going to get the down payment. That is an outright payment na 10 million. So no need to compute the present value. And get the present value of the future payments, which is 5 million beginning December 31, 20x1, which is subject to present value ordinary annuity. Annuity due pala, kasi that is also, tama lang, ordinary annuity kasi January 1 yun, tapos December 31 yung first payment. So, 15,200,000 yun. Get the total payment. So, ang ating total cost ay 25,200,000. Letter C. Number 7, Celine Company engaged your services to compute the goodwill in the purchase of Margo Company, which provided the following. So, ito ay one method of computing your goodwill. Okay? So, as agreed, the goodwill is measured by capitalizing excess earnings at 25% with normal return on average net asset at 15%. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin dito, kukunin muna natin yung average earnings, tapos kukunin natin yung ang tawag dito, yung 15% na expected normal return, and then, yung difference niya, yun yung excess earnings, kakapitalize natin na 25%. So, first, kunin natin yung average earnings. Average earnings will be, kunin mo tong lahat ng to, 1.4, 1.6, 2 million, 2,200,000, and then divide it by 4. So, kuha na lang tayong calculator para mas mabilis. Pakita natin yung computation. So, that's 1 million, 1.4 plus 1.6 plus 2 plus 2.2 divided by 4. So, that's 1,800,000. So, yun yung average earnings. Next, kukunin natin yung average net assets. So, ganun din yung process. 6 million plus 8 million plus 8.8 plus 9.2 divided by 4. The average net assets is 8 million. Tapos kukunin natin yung annual expected return na 15%. So, the expected return there is going to be 1,200,000, which is basically 15% of 8 million. Therefore, the excess earnings of the company is actually 600,000. 600,000 will be capitalized by 25% using the 25% agreement, which means that the goodwill of the company is 2,400,000. So ngayon, if that's 2,400,000, ang tinatanong, magkano yung total purchase price? Eh di ba ang net assets ni net assets ni Margo is 9,200. Dagdag mo yung goodwill na 2,400,000. So that's going to be 11,600,000. Yun na yung total purchase price mo. Okay, so yan yung isang method ng pagko-compute ng goodwill. Second question, this is another method. Lebron Company is negotiating to acquire Dwayne Company. Lebron manufactures and sells wood-burning stoves, and Dwayne Company produces parts that are required to manufacture stoves. Dwayne enjoys an exceptional reputation, and Lebron management believes it can continue Dwayne's level of income and satisfy its own need for parts. Okay? Under the contemplated arrangement, Lebron will negotiate for the acquisition of the net assets of Dwayne Company. The recorded amounts and current values of the assets and liabilities are as follows. Dwayne's earnings for the past 5 years average 5 million. This is believed to be reasonable estimate of future income. The level of income normally experienced by enterprises similar to Dwayne is 15%. Lebron and Dwayne agreed to capitalize average excess earnings at 25% in estimating the value of goodwill. How much should Lebron pay in acquiring Dwayne? Okay, so same process. First is we are going to get the average earnings, which was already provided at 5 million. So no need to compute. Next, we are going to get the net assets. Saan mo nakuha yung net assets? Di ba yun, yung recorded amount kasi natin at saka current values. So doon natin kukunin sa current values. Bakit hindi sa recorded amount? Kasi kung goodwill ang habol mo, di ba parang goodwill is computed as the difference between the cost and the fair value of net assets acquired. Kasi kung consider mo lahat ng excess, tatanggalin mo din lang. So we are going to get the net assets at current values. Para fair value method tayo. So that's going to be 20 million, which will be subject to 15% na expected earnings on the average. So that's going to be 3 million. So may excess kang 2 million na earnings, capitalize mo 25%, your goodwill is 8 million. So if we're going to get the total purchase price, then that's going to be the fair value of the net assets plus the goodwill, giving you 28 million. So the answer there is letter B. Okay. Number 9 is another method of computing goodwill. This is now based on the this is going to be based on the average earnings and not the excess earnings. Okay? So, Miami company are planning to sell the business to new interest. The cumulative net earnings for the past 5 years was 9 million, including casualty loss of 500,000. The current value of net assets is 20 million, and goodwill is determined by capitalizing average earnings at 8%. What is the amount of goodwill? Okay? So, first of all, kunin natin yung average earnings. Pag ang ginawa mo, 9 million divided by 5 years, mali ka na. Kasi take note, the 9 million includes a casualty loss of 500,000, which is not considered as a normal incurrence. So, kung gusto mong makuha yung normal talaga na earnings capacity niya, i-add back mo yung 500,000 kasi yung casualty loss, hindi naman talaga yan. Kumbaga, it is parang in the old terms, extraordinary item siya. Okay? Pero sa ating terms ngayon, basically, that is an unusual item that is not really part of your expenses. So, to get your average earnings, kunin mo yung 9 million, idagdag mo yung 500,000. So, that's already 9.5. Saka mo i-divide ng 5 para makuha mo yung tamang average earnings na 1,900,000. So, yung 1,900,000, i-capitalize mo using an 8%. So, i-divide mo ng 8% yung 1.9 million, giving you 23,750,000. Yan na yung total purchase price mo. Okay? So, kung ang hinahanap mo lang is yung goodwill, edi kunin mo yung total purchase price, ibawas mo yung net asset value na 20 million, you will get 3,750,000. So, that's letter C. Okay, so yun yung sagot natin sa number 9. Number 10, on January 1, 2021, Maroon 5 purchased Topaz Company at a cost that resulted in recognition of goodwill of 5 million having an expected benefit period of 10 years. During January of 2021, Maroon 5 spent an additional 2 million on expenditures designed to maintain goodwill. Due to these expenditures, at December 31, Maroon 5 estimated that the benefit period of goodwill was indefinite. In its December 31, 2021 balance sheet, what amount should Maroon 5 report as goodwill? Okay? So this is basically just a trivial component of their computation. So pag hindi mo alam yung treatment ng goodwill, kung hindi mo alam kung ano ba talaga ang ginagawa sa goodwill, then magkakamali ka dito. So, ang sagot natin dito is still 5 million because basically that is the amount as a result of the business combination. And the 5 million will be maintained there or will be retained as the goodwill and it will not be increased in any way even if there is an information given na may 2 million daw na nagastos, etc. etc. So, the answer there is still 5 million. So, any costs that are incurred, it will still be considered as an expense item and it will only be increased or the goodwill can only be increased if there is another business combination and it is not going to be subject to amortization. Okay? Unless nasa SME tayo, pero saka natin di-discuss yun kapag SME na. Pero yun yung general na concept dyan. So, ang sagot sa number 10 ay 5 million. 11. The script company has been experiencing significant losses in prior years. On December 31, 2021, the asset and liabilities are as follows. And you are being asked how much is the impairment loss applicable to Goodwill. Okay? So if you're going to compute for... Actually, this question is relating na talaga siya sa impairment of assets. So nasa IAS 36 talaga. Supposedly yung topic pa natin yan mamayang hapon. Pero since relating naman siya sa impairment of intangible asset din, sama na natin. Okay? So ang mangyari dyan, tinatanong sa atin kung magkano yung impairment loss applicable to Goodwill. Okay? So ang una mo gagawin, kunin natin yung total net asset value. So cash natin plus 20 plus 30 plus 50 plus 5 minus 40. Ang total carrying value ng ating business ay 75. Okay? Yung recoverable amount based on the information here is 62. Okay? Therefore, ang impairment loss natin ay 13 million as provided by IAS 36, which we will discuss in detail later on. We are going to allocate impairment loss in the following order. First, ubusin mo muna lahat ng goodwill. Tapos second, in proportion to the recoverable amounts of the individual assets na naiwan. So therefore, doon sa ating impairment loss na 13 million, yung entire 5 million na goodwill, uubusin natin yon. Tapos may maiiwan pang 8 million na impairment, i-allocate na natin siya doon sa other assets. So ang sagot sa ating question dito, yung number 11, ang impairment na applicable sa goodwill will be 5 million or the entire amount. Kasi yun ang kailangang maubos muna before mag-allocate sa ibang assets. Okay? 12. Luzon Company purchased Holo Company for 100 million. The net assets of Holo Company on the date of acquisition amounted to 80 million. Thus, there is a goodwill of 20 million. Holo Company has 3 segments, of which it is considered as a cash generating unit. The goodwill is allocated respectively to segments 1, 2, and 3 for 5 million, 6 million, and 9 million. On December 31, si segment 1 suffered significant losses and the recoverable amount became 30 million. On December 31, the carrying amounts are as follows. Ang question doon ay, in the income statement, magkano i-recognize as impairment loss? So focus lang tayo kay segment 1. Kunin natin yung total na value ni segment 1, which is yung 28 million na carrying value ng assets plus yung 5 million na na-allocate na goodwill based dun sa nasa taas. So we have 33 million. Looking at the recoverable amount, which is only 30 million, we have an impairment loss of 3 million. So ano gagawin natin dyan? The impairment loss of 3 million will be recognized. So yun ang sagot natin dyan. Ang impairment loss ay letter A, 3 million. Ang tanong is where are we going to charge the 3 million? We're going to charge it against your goodwill na 5 million. So ang goodwill mo na lang dito, 2 million. Kasi nagamit mo na yung 3 million dito to absorb the impairment loss. Okay? 13. On January 1, 2009, Chris August Company signed a 12-year lease for a building. So parang lease right siya. Chris August has an option to renew the lease for an additional 8-year period on or before January 1, 2013. During 2011, Chris August made substantial improvement to the building. The cost of the improvement was 3,600,000 with an estimated useful life of 15 years. At December 31, Chris August intend to exercise the renewal option, and Chris August has taken a full year's amortization on this improvement. So actually, leasehold improvement is supposed to be property, plant, and equipment, but you can also treat that as an intangible asset kasi basically parang ang habol mo lang naman talaga is ang habol mo dun sa leasehold improvement is yung ambience or yung intangible benefit niya Tapos at the end of the lease naman kasi talaga, mapupunta din lang yan dun sa lessor. So basically, pwedeng amortization, pwedeng depreciation, pero on my part, mas gusto ko depreciation na lang. Pero anyway, wala naman awayin natin yung problem, so tuloy lang natin. Chris August has taken a full year's amortization of this improvement. On December 31, magkano carrying amount ng leasehold improvement? Okay. So, alam natin na ang computation natin ay cost minus residual value divided by useful life. However, meron naman tayong explanation dito para lang mas maintindihan natin. We need to understand that our residual value will become 0 because the benefit attributable to the residual value of the improvement cannot be attributable to us as the lessee kasi may maintain nga yan or may iiwan yan doon sa leased property after mong umalis. So, 0 ang residual value. Next, our useful life will be based on 15 years, which is going to be the lower between the useful life of the asset and the remaining term of the leasehold or of the lease right natin. So, kasi sinabi 15 years yung useful life ng improvement, kung i-consider natin yung useful life ay yung ating lease term doon, 12 years na original nung 20x9, tapos nag-improve ka gumawa ka ng improvement nung 2x11. So, ang mangyari dyan, nagamit mo na yung 9, 10. So, 2 years. So, ibig sabihin, may naiiwan ka na lang na 10 years doon, plus yung 8 years na renewal option na i-exercise mo. So, 18 years yun. So, the lower, between 18 and 15, obviously, 15 years yun. So, ang gagawin natin ay, we are going to amortize or depreciate the leasehold improvement using 15 years kasi yun yung lower. So, ang lalabas ay 240,000. So, pag i-compute mo ngayon yung carrying value, 3,600,000 minus 240. So, ang lalabas ay 3,360. Yan. So, yun din lang yan. Okay. Number 14. On January 1, 20x9, Pontevedra Company signed an 8-year lease for office space. Pontevedra has an option to renew the lease for an additional 6 years on or before January 1, 2015. So, ang original ay 8 years. During 2011, Pontevedra incurred the following cost. So, general improvements to the leased property. That's going to be a leasehold improvement of 5,400,000. Office furniture and equipment with useful life of 8 years. And assembly line na useful life ay 5 years, total 1,800,000. So, December 31, 2011, Pontevedra's intention as to the exercise of the renewal option is uncertain. So, ibig sabihin, hindi natin siya pwedeng i-consider for purposes of determining the longer between the lease term and the useful life. So, doon lang tayo sa original magbe-base. In Pontevedra's balance sheet, accumulated depreciation for of leasehold improvement should be. So, ito lang ang focus natin, si leasehold improvement lang. Okay. So, ang tanong, ano gagamitin mo? Is it going to be the 10 years or yung nandito lang? Siyempre, kung 20x9 ka nag-start, tapos nagkaroon ka ng improvement ng 2x11, so 2 years yung nagamit mo, 8 years na lang, ay 6 years na lang yung naiwan. So 6 years versus 10 years, obviously 6 years ang shorter, yun yung gagamitin natin. Again, we are not going to consider the additional 6 years dito kasi it is not certain as to exercise. So, compute natin, annual depreciation, 5,400,000 divided by 6 years, so 900 lang, letter D. Okay. Next, number 15. Adam Sandler Company begins construction of a new facility. Following are some of the costs incurred in conjunction to the startup activities of a new facility. Ang tinatanong, magkano yung i-expense? Okay? So, production equipment, syempre hindi pa naman expense agad yan. Subject to depreciation. Travel cost of salaried employees to 400, parang relocation cost siguro, ganyan, tapos nagastos mo para malipat sila doon. So, 400,000 is expense. License fees are capitalizable cost. Training of local employees, so kasama yan sa expense outright. Tapos advertising cost, it is actually expense, pero ang tinatanong kasi organizational cost. Okay? So ang advertising cost is not it is not an organizational cost, but rather it is a normal marketing or selling, parang selling and administrative expense yun. So ang sagot natin dyan will be letter A. Yun lang. Okay, always ito yung mga notes natin, yung advertising cost, hindi nga siya organizational cost, it is a normal selling and administrative cost. Tapos yung production equipment and license fees are capitalized. Okay? Next, 16. JVP company incurred research and development cost in 20X1 as follows. And you are asked to compute for expenses. Okay? So, equipment acquired for use in various R&D projects, hindi yan pwedeng i-expense outright. Ang i-expense lang natin is yung depreciation above on the equipment. So, ito lang yan. Tapos, materials use expense. Compensation cost of personnel expense. Outside consulting fees expense. Indirect cost appropriately allocated expense. Okay? So, sagot natin is 11 million. So, ito yung explanation natin. So, di ba sinabi natin kanina, kapag ito sana ay para lang sa nag-iisang project, pwede mo siyang i-expense outright. Pero dahil it is for various R&D, yung depreciation lang niya ang pwede nating ma-consider. So, yun lang. Tuloy natin yung pagko-compute, lalabas ang 11 million. So, letter A. So, ito lang ang kasama. Yung mga ito lang. Okay? Next, number 17. So, ang tinatanong, magkano yung research and development expense? Okay? So, design of tools, jigs, molds, and dies involving new technology. So, expense mo yan. Modification of the formulation of a process. Expense mo din yan. Okay. Ay, wait. Formulation of... Tama lang. Okay. Troubleshooting in connection of breakdowns during commercial production. Take note, R&D ang pinag-uusapan. Pag nasa commercial production na yan, hindi na to pwedeng kasama sa R&D. So, scrap mo yan. Okay. Adaptation of an existing capability to a particular customer's need as part of continuing commercial activity. Scrap mo din tong ito. Scrap mo yan. Okay. So, ibig sabihin, ang papasok lang sa research and development ay itong dalawa. So, that's going to be 5,700,000, letter D. The two items cannot be used as R&D items because, or cannot be classified as R&D items because these are research and development items. Okay? Next, 18. Tinatanong ulit, magkano ang research and development expense natin? Okay, sige. Current period depreciation on building, housing, R&D activities. So, kasama na yan. Add mo na agad yan. Cost of market research study. Hindi porket may nabasa kang research, kwan na siya. Considered na as research and development. Okay? Pag sinabing market research, this is pertaining to your normal commercial process already. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, hindi yan R&D. Okay? Kasi kung yan parang marketing relating to a continuing operation already or an existing commercial production. Current period depreciation on a machine used in R&D activities, isama mo na yan. Okay. Salary of research and development director, syempre sama mo yung buong yan. Salary of vice president who spends 1/4 of his time overseeing R&D activities, yung 1/4 lang nito. Kasi yun lang yung attributable sa R&D. Okay? Tapos yung pension cost nung R&D director, ito yung buo, isama mo. Tapos yung pension cost ni Vice President, yung 1/4 din lang. Okay? So, buo. Ito, scrap mo to. Yung 500, isama mo. Yung 1/2 kasama. Yung 2/4, 1/4 lang. Yung, kasi 1/4 lang yung ini-spend niya as the Vice President sa R&D operations. Yung pension cost ni R&D director, buo. Tapos yung pension cost ni Vice President, 1/4 lang. So, total ay letter A. So, again, market research is part of your commercial production, kaya hindi yan kasama sa ating research and development. Okay. Next, number 19. Tinatanong, what is the total amount of cost that will be expensed when incurred? Legal cost to file a patent on product X, production of the finished product would not have been undertaken without the patent. So, ibig sabihin, this is going to be a capitalizable cost for the patent. So, hindi yan expense. Special equipment to be used solely for development of product X. So, ibig sabihin, hindi na to magagamit sa iba pang purpose. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ito, expense outright na yan. Okay? Wala na siyang gamit. Okay? Kahit sabihin mong may natira pang useful life, hindi mo na magagamit yan. Ubos na yan. Okay? So, expense outright yan. Baka may nagtatanong, sir, hindi ba dapat ito ay capitalizable to the patent of product X? No. Because this was used for the research and development, okay, of product X. So, hindi siya magka-qualify as for capitalization. Okay? Next, labor and material cost incurred in producing a prototype model. So, again, pag nagpo-prototype ka pa lang, wala pang technical feasibility. Kasi ini-establish mo pa lang siya, so expense pa rin yan. Tapos, cost of testing the prototype, expense din lang yun. So, pag i-total mo, 4 plus 3 plus 2, that's 9 million. So, that's going to be expense in all. So, ito lang ang capitalizable. Because basically, these items are used to establish technological feasibility. Okay? So, yun ang pinaka-explanation natin dyan. Okay, next. Number 20. On January 1, 20X1, Abra Company had capitalized cost of 10 million for a new computer software product with an economic life of 4 years. Sales for 20X1 for the software product amounted to 4 million. The total sales of the software over its economic life are expected to be 20 million. In its 20X1 income statement, Abra should record amortization of computer software at... Okay. I-scrap nyo tong explanation na to. Mali ang explanation na yan. Ang tamang explanation is, computer software is amortized based on revenue generating capacity. Okay. So this problem is specifically provided in order for us to give an illustration on the rule provided by the standard na pwede kang gumamit ng amortization pattern based on its revenue generating capacity. Okay? So instead na straight line, okay? Instead na straight line na tawag dito 10 million divided by 4. Actually, mali kasi yung wait lang the total sales should record amortization of computer software at... Okay. Wait lang kasi may concern tayo dito Ay, sorry. Wala palang pattern. Okay, sorry. Balik natin yung tama lang pala yung sagot kanina. Okay. Redo. Nagulo tuloy. Wait lang. Okay, yan. Sorry. So, for number 20, ang sagot natin dito is going to be straight line. Kasi we cannot provide a specific pattern on the doon sa revenue generating capacity niya. Binigay lang kasi yung first year out of the total of the over the economic life of the patent of the computer software. Pero hindi kasi natin makuha yung pattern ng benefits kasi 1 taon lang yung binigay. Okay? Wala ring binigay sa problem that the pattern can be computed. Okay, so wala tayong data regarding that. So in that case, we are going to use straight line. So that's 10 million divided by 4 years. Okay, so the answer there is letter A. 21. Okay, tinatanong tayo ng dalawang tanong. Number 1 is magkano yung capitalize sa software. Pangalawa, magkano yung capitalize or magkano yung i-report as inventory. Okay, so basically let us just go over. So, we are going to look for at the items and determine kung yan ay capitalizable sa software or sa inventory. So, una, completion of detailed program design. So, design pa lang yun So, natapos mo na yung design. So, ibig sabihin, nagsa-start ka pa lang sa development phase. Cost incurred for coding and testing to establish technological feasibility. Expense din lang yan. So, ito yung mga early stages ng development cost natin na i-expense. Other coding cost after establishment of technological feasibility. So, pwede mo na itong i-capitalize. Other testing cost after establishment of technological feasibility. Pwede mo na rin niyang i-capitalize. Tapos, producing product master for training materials. So, ibig sabihin, pag sinabing product master, ito na yung main na software. Or kumbaga, yan yung pinaka-main na laman or yung initial na nagawa mong intangible asset. So, that's also capitalizable. So, ito na yung capitalizable cost mo. Okay? Tapos, yung next natin, ito na yung mga duplication na. So, ibig sabihin, gumagawa ka na ng inventory from the main software. So, basically, kung question number 1 ang tinatanong, yung capitalizable cost lang natin for the software itself or the intangible asset itself is 7.5 million. Ito kasing succeeding cost na to, these are already relating to the production of the inventory. So, that's already inventoriable. So, 5 million naman tayo sa question number 2. Okay? So, that's the end of our discussion ng intangible asset.